Hello everyone and welcome to the semifinals of the American Cup. It is Leinier, Dominguez, Perez versus Hikaru, Nakamura. This is the second game of their classical match. The first one ended in a draw, and Dominguez, Perez came into the semifinals by defeating none other than Levon Aronian, and Hikaru, as we've already seen, I made a video on it, defeated Samuel Sevian. So this is a wonderful game. You will enjoy it. Let's check it out. We have Ponta e4 and Ponta c5 by Hikaru. He goes for the Sicilian defense, knight to f3, knight to c6 and d4, going for the open Sicilian. Sorry about that. We have c captures on d4, knight captures, and now pawn to e5. This is the Loewenthal variation of the Sicilian. A little bit different than what you guys are used to, probably knight f6, knight to c3, and then e5, which is the Pelikan variation, or the Sveshnikov variation, or the Lasker variation, something we've seen quite a lot even in the World Chess Championship matches. But here, pawn to e5 right away, like I said, the Loewenthal variation, knight to b5, we have d6, knight 1 to c3, and pawn to a6. We have knight to a3 and bishop to e6, so similar as you would see in a Sveshnikov. Knight to c4 and now rook to b8. You could go for b5 right away. Hikaru prepares it with rook b8, knight to d5, and now, of course, you will not allow this knight to remain on such an active square. Bishop captures, pawn captures, and now knight c to e7. We have pawn to g3, and here there are a couple of games that reach this position. Knight to f6 is a known move, g6 is a known move, queen to c7 is a known move, but Hikaru goes pawn to b5, and it is now, as of move 11, that we have a completely new game. So knight back to e3, we have pawn to g6, preparing to fianchetto the bishop, and now pawn to a4. This is pretty much always a good move. When you have a6 and b5, a4 just has to be played. So here, knight to f6, we have a captures on b5, a captures. This opens up the a file for the white rook, bishop to g2, and now Hikaru doesn't go bishop g7, but instead bishop to h6. Why bishop to h6 instead of bishop to g7? It's hard to say, but you have to be a very strong player to play such a move. If you're not a strong player, people will just look at you weird. So here both players castles, and now queen to d3. We have knight to d7. This opens up the possibility of knight coming to c5, which will be an excellent square, but also pawn to f5, e4, f4 become possible in the future. Bishop d2, we have knight to c5, now attacking the queen, queen back to e2, and now queen to c7. Making room for the other rook to come into the game. Pawn to b4, again, pretty much always a great move for white here, even the top move recommended by the engine. Knight back to d7, and now rook to a5. Leinier goes after the b5 pawn, and Hikaru defends it with a nice, not a tactic, but sort of, he defends it with activity. Bishop captures, and now knight to f5, inviting Leinier to capture on b5, but if he does, then Hikaru will play queen to c3, and it's a very weird position, maybe giving Hikaru too much activity. Then this pawn is weak, this pawn is weak. The rooks will get traded off, the other rook probably coming to b8, so it would be maybe a bit too much, even though the engine says it's perfectly fine. But okay, rook to a7 goes after Hikaru's queen. Hikaru defends, and now rook captures on b7. Queen captures, and bishop back to d2, not allowing the knight to have this edge over the bishop. It's always unpleasant when your opponent can always capture your piece on every move, and you can't capture your opponent's piece on every move. Then you constantly have to calculate it and take that into consideration. So it's just a very, very nice move. We have rook to a8, Hikaru now activating his rook, queen to d3, and now rook to a2. We have rook to d1, and now knight to f6, putting pressure on that d5 pawn, bishop to g5, and now king to g7. We have bishop to h3, putting a lot of pressure on Hikaru's knights there, and now knight to d4. Now this is a very, very unpleasant. The c2 pawn is hanging, and okay, you can easily defend it, you just advance it to c3. This is what Leinier does, but now knight to c2, and this knight to c2 knight looks very odd, but it's really a great move, and you will very quickly see why. Here we have queen to f3, puts pressure on the knight here. Hikaru just brings it back. Knight to g8. We have bishop to f1, and now rook to a3. And here all sorts of dirty tricks become possible, like knight can come to d4, also knight can capture on b4, the queen is now on f3, and there's no good way to actually deal with this. Bishop to c1 was played, we have rook to b3, and now queen to e4. You have to give up one of the pawns, be it the b4 pawn or the c3 pawn. So queen to e4, and now rook captures on c3. Hikaru wins back material. Or rather, now he's up a pawn. We have bishop to b2 for this one pawn. Leinier is hoping to grab hold of this diagonal. If he can play f4 and bust open this diagonal, then Hikaru's king might be in trouble. Knight to f6 attacks the queen. Queen to h4, and here we have rook to b3 by Hikaru. Also, a very nice idea was knight to d4, and Hikaru most definitely thought about it, and he probably didn't find what happens after rook captures on d4. But here, if rook to c2, then black is just much better. The rook here is hanging, and once you move the rook back, rook captures on b2, and well, this is now a weakness. The d5 pawn is weak, the b4 pawn is weak, the f2 pawn will be weak, and the bishop has nothing to do for the entire game. For the rest of the game, this bishop is just sitting there, and the knight will have many squares. So like maybe even e4, e3, anything can be played here for black. It's completely crushing. But okay, easy to miss. Rook to b3 was played, and now bishop to c1. We have knight to g8, again covering the h6 square. You do not want any business there. Queen to d8 now, not allowing the black queen to grab hold of the c file. Now the queen is nicely controlling that. And now queen to e7. Hikaru offers a queen trade. Queen back to a5 goes after the b5 pawn. And now knight to d4, nicely defending. With bishop to e3, now knight to f3 with check, king g2, and queen to f6. Defends the knight. With bishop to e2 goes after the knight, and now pawn to e4. And now, okay, Hikaru did open up this diagonal for the dark square bishop, but his knight is nicely placed on f3, and you can't really just eliminate it and win the black queen, because then queen captures comes with check, then the rook hangs. So for the moment, it's impossible. You will have to move your king to f1 at some point if you even want to attempt such a thing. So here, queen to after e4, we have queen captures on b5. Queen to b2 now puts pressure on the b4 pawn, also on the bishop. You have to be careful not to blunder it. Now comes queen to a6, hoping to get that b pawn pushed up the board, but now just knight to f6. Hikaru could capture on b4, but if he captures on b4, then you allow bishop captures, and king captures, and the white pretty much solved all of his problems. So he's not gonna allow this, and as long as the rook is on the third rank, the white king can never get to f3. So knight to f6, we have pawn to h3, stopping knight g4, and now pawn to h5. King to f1, now finally hoping to get this bishop captures on f3 move in, and then the bishop on this diagonal might be incredible. But now queen to e5 by Hikaru, and now king to g2. And here Hikaru has a most crushing move, so feel free to pause the video and win another game for Hikaru in classical while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this brilliancy. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook captures on e3. That's what Hikaru played, and now you realize what's happening. The g3 pawn will be weakened, and h4 is coming. So there's really nothing to play here. F captures on e3 was played, pawn to h4, and even if you play bishop captures on f3, it's just not enough. Just queen captures on g3, king f1, now he captures on f3, threatens checkmate, and okay, you can't stop that, but now 94, and that's pretty much it. If you move the rook, then pawn to f2 is coming, and queen g1 will end the game. So instead, after this h4 move, g captures on h4 was played, but this is even worse. Now it's a forced mate in 2. Hikaru played queen to h2 with check, king to f1, or rather maybe even yeah, I think on queen to h2 that it was in this position that Leinier, Dominguez, Perez resigned the game. But I will check. I don't want to trick you guys. Yeah, it was in this position that he resigned, as there is nothing more to be done here. Once king to f1 is played, queen to g1 will be checkmate, and what a guy Hikaru, getting a checkmate with black in classical chess. Absolutely incredible stuff. So he doesn't just win the first match in classical against Samuel Sevian, he also disposes of Leinier Dominguez Perez, also in classical time format. That's how Hikaru advances to the finals. The other match is Wesley So versus Fabiano Caruana. I will also cover that match next, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, wonderful game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Duitran, Ravishing Reptiles YouTube, Mike Wagner, Thought Dreams, and a very nice video yesterday for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And if you haven't seen the Fischer video yesterday, do check it out. It's the first link in the description below. See you soon.